Yes, there will be. Welcome, everybody. Glad that you're here and so excited that you're here for this conversation that we're going to have about what? From potential to performance, unlocking leadership flexibility, which we believe is a key component of how we can move from our potential to our performance, whether we're thinking about this for ourselves, whether we're thinking about this organizationally. I've got a little challenge I need to solve here. Give me a second. There it is. Anyway, I'm so excited to have you here and ready to talk to you about this topic, for which I have a great deal of passion. Some of you may know that I've long called myself the Chief Potential Officer of the Kevin Eikenberry Group. So, Adrian, you're logged. Now you're seeing all the people on my team that are logged in, and they are logged in as co-hosts. So listen, here we go. I'm glad you're here. I don't know I know some of the names here. So I know what some of you do, where you sit. I certainly don't know all as the number continues to grow, but I'm guessing that you're in HR, you're in OD, you're in training, or you're in line management. You may sit anywhere in the organization as a decision maker or an influencer, whether you're at the C level, whether you're an owner, a founder, a VP, a director, a senior manager, a manager. You're in one of those spots, and it's for people like you that I have created this session. And here's what I believe, or at least what I'm assuming, is this is the assumption upon which I have based what I have built for you for the next hour. And that is that you care about the success and effectiveness of your organization. Like that matters to you. And you know that if we're going to get greater success, leaders are a part of that. Like we can't get to the organizational success we want without more effective leaders. Wherever we're at, that's one of the governors that's keeping us from moving further and faster. And so let me take just a second to let you know a little bit about me. If you don't know, just a couple things about me before we get started. So there it is, Chief Potential Officer of the Kevin Eikenberry Group. I've been doing this work for a very long time. I've got a great team of folks, some of whom have made guest appearances in the video for a moment. I've written a bunch of books. Some of them are listed up there. I've been noted by some groups as being kind of smart about leadership. I've been working with leaders from around the world for the last 30 years. Last time I counted, leaders from 53 countries and companies and industries, pretty much if you can name it, we've worked with them. And so all of that is true. And perhaps the single most important thing for you to know about me is that, like you, I care about leadership. And like you, probably, I'm leading a team every day. Again, so a couple of whom you have now quickly seen. So hopefully what that means is that I bring a breadth of experience and perspective that adds value, but also I'm like you in that I'm leading a team every day. And here are a few things that people have said about me, kind things people have said about me in the past. And as you take a look at that, let me say a little bit about where we're headed. When you signed up for this, it may have been a day or two. You may have slept since then. So you may not remember what it was that we were going to talk about exactly. But we're going to talk about what leadership flexibility is and isn't and why it's important. We're going to talk about the mindset that's required for flexibility to take place, mindset being a critical component of this conversation. We're going to talk about what we call the flexible leadership approach and how to apply it. And then lastly, how you can use this approach in your organization. And there's lots of ways that you can do that. And so we're going to land the plane talking about how you can take these ideas and apply them in your organization. While you are likely here wearing two hats, as an individual leader, this webinar is very much focused on the organizational piece of this. How do we develop the leaders in our organization? How do we take care of and support the leaders in our organization? And if you're wearing both hats like me, we will ask a few questions about you individually, including them on the next slide. But fundamentally, this is a conversation about our organizational success and the development of our leaders organizationally. But I do want to open with this question. It's a really important question. Whoops, I got both there at once. So let me just give you both. Do you lead differently than you did 5 years ago? And what about the leaders in your organization? How many of them would say that? Are they leading differently than they did 5 years ago, 3 years ago, Here's the question. Many leaders will say to me sort of proudly, no. Heidi says yes and no, right? So I would say to any leader who says, well, no, or even yes and no, I would say this: if your leaders aren't changing in a changing world, they're becoming obsolete. And that might be a little strong, might be kind of a hot take, I suppose. And yet I believe there's a lot of truth in that statement. Like, you've all heard this phrase, right? That insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So let's just go back, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 8 years ago, and were the leaders in your organization amazing then? Like, chances are 5 years ago you had some challenges with your leaders, which means they weren't doing it perfectly then. And if they're still doing it the same way now and the world is changing, how could we possibly expect to get different results? So in one of the books that I co-wrote with Wayne Termel, called The Long Distance Leader, this is the cover of the second edition, but in both the first and second edition, we make this point that while there's a lot that's different about leading at a distance, we said that you should think leadership first, location second. In other words, not everything about leadership is changing, but the stuff that's changing matters a lot. And in my latest book, Flexible Leadership, I don't make this statement. I don't make the corollary statement to that. But fundamentally, this is true, that to be a flexible leader means to think leadership first. There's a lot that we all know about leadership, much of which is helpful, maybe not all, but much of it is helpful. We know some stuff about how to do it well. Think about that first, and then think about context. Because if we aren't thinking about context, then some of the things we're doing may not work, just like when you suddenly had to do it at a distance, how it was the same, and yet it wasn't the same. Kind of like Heidi's point in the chat, where she says, well, I'm kind of doing it the same, but not entirely. So let's talk about this word context. Sherry's making some comments in the chat about what is on the next slide. I don't know if you're looking ahead, Sherry. I don't know how you can do that. But here's the thing, like, the context of work has changed, is changing, will continue to change. And all of these bullet points are true. And like, as of today, we could add war or a new war to this list. And how might that have impact? The point that I'm making here is that all of these things on this slide are true. And all of those things have the possibility that we might need to lead differently because of those things. I mean, I could go through that list, but I don't need to. You all have seen those things. You felt those things. You're feeling those things every day, right? So going back to us as a leader 5 years ago and us as a leader today, or the leaders in our organization, I would just ask this question. If you are leading the same way you did 5 years ago, has the changing world led you to be more or less effective? Like we already said, that 5 years ago, we were less than perfect leaders. The world has swirled and changed, and we've stayed the same. Has all of that conspired to make us more effective? Not likely. So let me give you another new version of, or definition of, insanity, one you haven't heard of until today. Doing the same things in a new context and expecting the same results. Like, we weren't even getting perfect results before, but now the context has shifted, but we haven't changed. We're not even going to get the same results anymore. Which is why I made the hot take of, if we are not adjusting, changing, flexing, then we're becoming obsolete. Or at least we're becoming outdated. Okay. And you may be this may be leading you to ponder, which is fine, but it also may be leading you to a question that I've had lots of people ask me in the last year or so. And they say, well, wait a minute, Kevin, I get that we ought to learn and we ought to grow. I get all that, but aren't we supposed to be consistent as a leader? Like, aren't leaders supposed to be consistent? Like, don't people want a boss, a manager, a leader that they know what they're going to get from them? That's a good question. It's a fair question. So I'd like you to consider a tree? Is that tree, or any tree, that's a mature tree like that, is it stable? Is it consistent? Sure. It's not going anywhere. It's stable. It's consistent. And we say, well, that's what I want to be as a leader. I want to be like solid as a rock. I want people to know where I stand. And the reason that that tree doesn't move in that way is because it's rooted, right? Without the roots, it's not going to be consistent. And for you as a leader, without the roots, you can't be consistent either. What are our roots? Well, they're not literal roots. They are our values, our principles, the principles of human behavior and group dynamics, the purpose of our organization. Like, those things aren't changing. And we should be consistent and rooted in those things. Take another look at that tree. Let's imagine now that that tree was not an image, but a video. And you would know that if there was even the slightest hint of a breeze, that tree would be flexing, wouldn't it? The branches would be moving, the leaves would be moving. And so that tree is flexible as well as consistent. So when people ask the questions, Kevin, shouldn't leaders be consistent? They're fundamentally saying, should I be consistent or should I be flexible? And I'm suggesting you should be like a tree. You should be consistent and flexible, because a tree is both. And so must we be. We must be rooted in our values, in our principles, in our purpose. We must be flexible in our approach. We must be rooted in our what and why and flexible in our how. And so that means that we have to reconsider, the way we're thinking about the world, that the world isn't just, is it this or is it this, but it's both. So I would suggest to you that what I would call both and leadership is based on a statement that I have made that I believe in to be profoundly true, that the test of an effective leader is one who has the ability to hold two opposing ideas in mind at the same time and apply each when needed. That the world isn't one-dimensional, that the world isn't as simple as a true and false quiz, but rather the world is in most ways a both and world, which means that we must lead from a both and perspective. And that's what we would call flexible leadership. Consistent and flexible. Not one or the other, not choosing the one which we like more, but both, because both are true. And so if we then think about our role and our work in that way, we have a chance to be more effective and to navigate the uncertainty and complexity that we lead in today. So let's talk about the mindset. I promised I would talk about the mindset of a flexible leader, and I've actually given you two parts of it already, but let's lay it back out for you. Right? Number one is that context matters a lot. Like, the more you understand context of something, the smarter you are. I'll give you an example that all of you will recognize. Someone has come into your office or sent you a Slack message or sent you an email, and they've asked you a question, and they wanted your input, they wanted your ideas, they wanted your help, and your first thought or even your first statement to them was, well, it depends. And what it depends on is the context. Right? When you say it depends, what you're saying is, well, I need to think more about what's actually here before we make a decision, rather than me just doing what I might normally do, or what the first thing that comes to my mind. Rather, I need to consider, well, what does it depend on? And when we say it depends, or tell ourselves it depends, and then we stop and consider the situation or the context before we move forward, guess what we've just done? Been a flexible leader. But too often we don't do that enough. More on that in a minute, right? So the flexible leader's mindset also is, as I've already outlined for you, it's a both and mindset. Okay. The third part of a flexible leader's mindset is one that might, on the surface, seem a bit counterintuitive. And that is that habits can be a barrier. So let's just be clear. Without habits, we can't get through our day, right? There's 15 things that you did without habits, or what we do without thinking, like that you did this morning between when you woke up and you got to your desk, whatever that was. There's a bunch of stuff that you did you never even thought about. You didn't use any mental capacity. It's all in auto response. It's all in automatic. And absolutely, habits are helpful to us in all parts of our life, including as a leader. No question. But they can be a barrier because not all of our habits are serving us. And not all of our habits are helpful. And not all of our habits are good habits. And so here's what, and because of the nature of them, and because they're allowing us to go on automatic and move on to something else, we often don't think about them. So I would say to you that unexamined habits keep us from improving. So if we're going to help our leaders improve, grow, flex, one of the things we have to help them think about is their habits and which ones are helping and which ones are hindering their progress. Unexamined habits keep us from improving. So habits can be a barrier. One more mindset to consider. Style can be a prison. Now, I've been in the leadership development business for over 30 years, which is a long time. And if you think about the study of leadership and leadership development outside of military contexts, that study has been happening for, say, 100 or 120 years-ish, right? So I've been involved in it for, say, between a third and a quarter of the time, which, other than saying, wow, Kevin's old, what it says is, hopefully what it tells you is that I have a little bit of perspective about this. And as it turns out, I happen to know some of the people that have built some, and can call them friends and colleagues, some of the people that have built some of the tools upon which a lot of leadership development is built. And I can tell you from the ones I know, and what I believe about the ones I don't know, is that all of that building was done with great positive intention. And one of the things that happens is we create assessments and models and styles with the intention of having it help people take the complexity of the world and understand it a little better. A model helps us get our arms and heads around something that's more complex. So why am I saying that style can be a prison? Because whether we're talking about a style or a strength, we then, as humans, and sometimes without this intention in organizations, have translated people from saying, I have these tendencies, to this is who I am. Like sometimes in organizations, we've worked so hard to get people to really understand the style model that we're using or the strengths model that we're using. And again, I have zero problem with these models. The problem that I have is that what we end up doing is trying to get people to really understand them, which simply leads people to further simplify what was already a simplified model. And all of the nuance is now gone. And let me just say to you lovingly, and I'll say to all of your leaders lovingly, that you are more than a letter or a color. You are more than a style or a set of strengths. Here's why style can be a prison. Not because it was meant to be, but it can become one because styles and strengths are tendencies, not identities. And when we accept those results or that model as being who we are, it makes it extraordinarily hard for us to shift. It makes it extraordinarily hard for us to flex, because now we've said, this is who I am. So this is what I do. So this is how I lead. So people are going to have to figure out how to work with me because this is me. You are more than a style. You are more than a set of strengths. You are, and every leader is more than those things. Those are helpful tools until they're not. And a flexible leader has to realize that style and assessment and strength have a place, but they just have a place. They're a tool. They don't identify who we are. So those are the mindsets that we need. I'll go back just for a second. The context matters a lot. And when you ask yourself or say to yourself, it depends, you know that that's true. We just don't do that often enough. That both and is how the world works in almost every way. The world is more complex and more than one thing can be true. If you've ever said, well, both of these things could be true, that's a both and mindset. That habits can be a barrier if they're unexamined and they're not helpful and they're hindering us instead. And because if we lean into the habit and don't stop and think, we're not going to flex. We're going to do what comes automatically. We're going to do what we've done 612 times before without thinking. And sometimes it will be great. And sometimes based on the situation or context, it won't be. Being a flexible leader doesn't mean we're automatically going to always change. What it means is we've got to be willing to think about what we might have to do differently in this moment. And that our style can be a prison. It can make it very difficult for us to move or adjust. Like, people can't escape from prison, right? It's just isn't very easy. And just like us, once we have an identity, like I would say, if you say my identity is to be a learning leader, to be a growing leader, to be a flexible leader, then that identity allows you to adjust. But if your identity is around a style which has tremendous value and yet has blind spots, then you're going to end up living with those blind spots. And that's what I want us to be able to avoid and help our leaders to avoid. So let's talk about what we call the flexible leadership approach. And the flexible leadership approach has three components. And those things are intention, context, and flexors. And I've hinted at the first two a little bit. I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to take a sip of my drink here in a second. And I'm going to say that if you have a comment or a question, use the chat right now to put that in. I've been kind of going along here. And there haven't been a lot of comments like there usually is when I do a webinar, so I don't know what that means. Maybe that means that I'm going too fast, or maybe you're just taking notes. I don't know. So I'm going to take a second to make sure that everyone is on board. If you have a question or a comment, now would be a great time to share it. Lacking energy. Okay, well, I would like to think, Nisi, that that's what it means, or that Patricia, that's what it means. And I'd like to hope it's not the post-lunch lacking energy, but I just wanted to check. So thank you, everybody. So let's talk about this flexible leadership approach. Intention, context, and flexors. So what do I mean by that? Well, intention means that we are doing something intentional, right? So that our mindset and our beliefs are such that support the idea of being flexible. And that intention means that we're choosing, right? Because if we're on autopilot, working based on our habits and past experiences only, then we aren't going to flex. If there's no intention to flex, we're not likely going to. Okay. Calvin says, are there distinctions based on age demographics related to preferred leadership styles? So Calvin, I might have a divergent opinion here compared to many. I have concerns about us using demographics, ages, and other things as a way to categorize people too closely, because then we move closer to stereotyping people. And once we've stereotyped people, we make it difficult for us to see them differently. We're basically assigning their identity to them from ourselves. Like none of us want to be stereotyped, so why would we want to stereotype others? Now I know all of the good work that's been, a lot of the good work that's been done around the different generations. And I'm not discounting the fact that we are living in a time. This is, by the way, another one of these things that makes the world difficult and challenging for us, is that we are living in the first time in human history where people from 4 different generations are in the workplace together. Right? So, Calvin, my answer to your question is that I don't spend much time thinking about that. Like, I want to know if I'm going to lead a workshop, I want to know, I'd love to know what the general demographics are, like how much experience do people have and that sort of stuff. But I'm not going to then say, oh, well, I got 5 millennials and 2 baby boomers and a whole bunch of whatever's Generation Zs. Like, I don't think about it that way. And I try not to let that get in my way. So I don't know if that's helpful, Calvin, or not. So, however, your question comes well timed because that is, you're a whatever. Okay, well, I just don't remember. See, I try not to worry about this so much, I kind of even forget the titles. All of that question, though, Calvin, is about context, right? If you're if you need to lead in a moment with a group of folks who are all have a ton of experience, might your next step be different than if you're leading a group of folks who have just been in the workplace for a year or two? Very possibly. And one of those approaches might be natural for you and the other one might not be, but the context would tell you that maybe I need to do it differently. So those questions are useful. I just don't like rounding people up into buckets as much, is all I'm saying, right? So what does the situation tell us? What does the setting tell us? What are we taking any time to make sense of what's going on around us before we make a decision? Here's what I would say to you. That as the world is changing, the context of our work is much more often complicated or complex than it is clear. And so the natural, obvious cause and effects that we used to be able to ascribe, the fact that an expert might know or a subject matter expert might know everything that needs to be known, all of that is less true than it used to be. And if we continue to lead in a mode where everything's clear, cause and effects are obvious, best practices reign, then we can lead differently than when the world is more complicated or complex, can't we? That's just another way of saying how important context is. And in a flexible leadership approach, we have ways to look at context, consider context, so that we make more informed, take more informed approaches to the work that we're doing. And then the third thing, I haven't really mentioned until right now, is what we call flexors. And I introduced the word flexor exists as it relates to our muscles, but I'm introducing this word to the world through my book, Flexible Leadership, as a way of looking at things, leaning in certain directions, and making adjustments. So let me tell you a little story. So I have the chance to work with lots of leaders and lead lots of workshops, and oftentimes, specifically often in our But to Boss workshops or versions thereof, we ask people, what are the mistakes that leaders make? Often we ask, what are the mistakes that new leaders make? Leaders that are either brand new to leading or are leading a new group to them. And I just ask people to brainstorm what are the mistakes that they've seen. And over time, I've seen lots of mistakes listed. But I want to share a few of them that I've seen often. Okay. And here are some. People say, well, it's a mistake if leaders are indecisive. And it's a mistake if they're making decisions too quickly. And I've had lots of folks say, well, it's a mistake if they make too much change or change stuff too quickly, but it's also a mistake if they don't change anything. And I've heard people say, well, it's a mistake if all they ever do is give negative feedback. And oh, by the way, it can be a mistake if they only give positive feedback. And I've certainly also heard, in fact, I heard 2 days ago, that it's a mistake if people delegate everything and try to like wash their hands of the work. And it's definitely a mistake if they delegate nothing. The people that I've asked this question of and have given those answers, and I'm guessing. So I'm just going to stop right here in the chat just to check on whether people are still awake or not. Like, do any of those things ring true for you? Any of those? Just give me a yes in the chat. If like, yeah, yeah. Do any of those ring true for you? Yeah, we can make another longer list of other mistakes, right? Like acting like they know when they don't for sure. Okay. So what this points us to is the idea of flexor thinking. So let me describe to you flexor thinking. That in many cases, like the four that I just showed you, that leadership actions, behaviors, and choices sit on a continuum, right? And based on the last slide, the extreme ends of that continuum are problematic. Too much change, no change. Delegate everything, delegate nothing, right? So I would say that those two things are profoundly true. Now, for an individual leader, we have habits, tendencies, comfort levels, and experience that rest somewhere on that continuum. And often in the direction of one way or the other. I'm not saying that we're all in for one end or the other, the problematic extremes, but most of us on most things are leaning in one direction or the other. Okay? And here's the thing. Your experience, your comfort, your tendency, your habit, your auto response might not be the best answer in a given moment. And yet, what most of us do is just lean into our comfort and our tendency and not consider the context. This is flexor thinking. It builds on this idea that well, it's probably not as simple as yes or no. It's probably not as simple. It depends. So like, what does it depend on? And based on that, maybe I need to go past my comfort zone. Maybe I need, if I'm a person who has a hard time, well, let's just put it up here. If I'm a person that's really good at doing and doesn't really ever delegate, are there times when I need to go away from my natural tendency, my habit, what I've done before, and lean in this direction? Yeah. But if my team is totally overwhelmed with a project that's 3 weeks overdue, is today the day that I should delegate? Probably not. Context. And if you're a person that likes to delegate, loves to delegate, has good success with delegation, are there times when you ought to roll up your sleeves and help and not just delegate another thing? Probably. It's not about what we want, what we like, what we're comfortable with, what our style tells us we are. It's what does the context tell us. That's what a flexor is. So let me give you some examples of them, right? In the book Flexible Leadership, there are 19, but it's really not about the 19. It's really about this idea that two things that we might have seen as being opposite are actually symbiotic. And it's not like a black or white, yes or no, true or false answer about which one to do, but rather which direction should we be leaning or moving in this moment or in this situation. Here are some examples along with do delegate. We can think about task versus people. Is our first focus on the task, the work, or the people? We can think about do we tend to go fast? Do we tend to go slow? Sometimes one end of that is more helpful in this moment, regardless of our natural tendencies or personal preferences. Do we lean? Do we focus our influence on strength or warmth? And the answer to all these should be yes. Are we detail oriented or big picture focused? Are we results focused or process driven? Do we focus on is the customer number one, or is the employee number one? And then we have things like the change flexor, which I mentioned earlier, right? Too much change, not enough change, no change. All positive feedback, all negative feedback. The right answer in all of these cases starts with, well, it depends. Tell me more about the situation, and I'll tell you which will be most helpful, which will serve us best in this time. This is flexor thinking. So before I go on, I'm going to shift gears here in just a sec. So now, what questions do you have? Anybody? I'll just put this back up. What questions do you have about any of the stuff that I've talked about so far? Anything at all? Anybody? Anything at all? Okay. So the question then is, for the leaders in your organization, are you thinking about these three things? Like, can I show the bullets below the flexors again? Meaning, I get my slides to move, sorry. Meaning that, is that the one you want, Aaron? I can leave it there for a second. I'm going to presume that's the one she wanted. And by the way, if you're wondering, if you're furiously taking notes, I'll show you at the end what you can do to get the copy of the slides. So there you go. Oh, the similar one to the last slide. Yeah, I can do that. Sure. That one. There you go. I'll put it there for a second. Are we doing this stuff? See, there's a couple things going on here. One is there's some new skills to learn that I'm going to presume perhaps you're not really thinking about. But the first part of that is, what's the mindset and the intention? We have the intention set. Is the mindset matching the skills that we want people to have? Because if the mindset doesn't match the skill set, nothing's going to change. Like, it's just not. Like, if the mindset doesn't match the skill set, doesn't matter. Okay. You're welcome, Aaron. And I'm going to presume that you had enough time. I'm going to go back here and ask this question again. Are you doing this stuff? In other words, are you expecting your leaders to flex based on a changing context? Now, I'm guessing the direct answer to that is no, because I'm using language there that you might not have thought of before. So it's not meant to be a trick question, but really, are you equipping your leaders with the ability to think about what works in this moment? See, sometimes when people think about flexible leadership, they want to think about, like, are we innovative, and can we change our strategy, and can we pivot? Like, that's all valuable and useful. But what I'm talking about here is practical, everyday, 5 times a day. How am I going to interact in this meeting? How am I going to make this decision? Who and how many people, and how should I interact with people, gain people's agreement, get their input? That's what I'm talking about, the everyday stuff, the stuff that really makes leadership happen. Now, this presentation, the title of it was From Potential to Performance. And you may be thinking, well, Kevin, I don't see the connection between all the stuff you've talked about and potential and performance. Let's talk about that for a second. So what is potential? Potential is possibility. Potential is something that we haven't yet seen. Potential is untapped. We're not there yet. It's describing something that we don't have yet. What is performance? What we have now. Performance is current behavior, current results, current actions, current results, current performance. So how do we translate potential to performance? Well, first of all, people have to have a belief and a mindset that they have to see that potential. We as leaders have to help them see that potential. We're talking about others, because they can't translate from potential to performance until they have that mindset. And I would suggest that if people are locked into what they're doing, into their habit, into their auto response, into their belief about how they're supposed to do it, then they can't move toward to something else because they've locked in. Like experience is useful until we don't consider anything else. So to move from potential to performance, from possibility to a new present, we have to be willing to say learning matters, flexibility matters, because I don't have it all figured out right now. And if I want to get closer to my potential, I have to try new stuff. And if I don't believe that I need to try new stuff, guess what I won't do? Try new stuff. Okay. There's a question here that says, company culture seems to prefer and reward a choice of one end of the flexors. I think there are some cases where that's true. And one of those examples, I think, would be sort of the employee first, customer first. And there are highly successful organizations that have as a part of their values and culture to be on an end of that spectrum. And yet I think it's useful to think about that spectrum, right? I would think about that flexor differently if I was in an organization like, say, Marriott, who's very much leaning toward both in what they say and what they do, that they're very much leaning in toward. It's about the team first, and the customer will follow based on us getting it right with the team. So yes, I think that's can be true. I certainly don't think it's always true. And I think that if you're in an organization for one of these flexors where that is true, you certainly need to be aware of that. Like, we can be countercultural a little bit if we need to be, but we don't want to overdo that. And we want to sort of keep our political wits about us. And yet that doesn't mean that we can't try something new. And remember, I'm not talking now about big strategy stuff. I'm talking about what I'm going to do in this moment right now. Okay. So Patricia, Kevin, does a leader need to adapt leadership style to different generations to be effective? And I'll go back to what I said before. Do I think that based on what the needs and expectations of people based on their age and experience, might I need to take that into account? Yeah. But I'm going to be really careful with that word style in and of itself, right? The leaders need to adapt their approach based on different generations, maybe. But again, I think that if we can get ourselves in trouble if we start to say, well, people of this age want this stuff from work, and people of this age want this stuff from work, for example. I think the world is far more complex than that. That putting people in buckets like that is trying to get to either or. And what I'm suggesting is the world is both and. Right? I've said for a long time, for example, that people of my generation who very into the baby boomers, for depending on how you define that, that's where I would say that I am. So the people that are of my age grew up with you go to work and you sort of do what you need to do, and you sort of follow along, and maybe you take some risks, but like there's this respect level for the boss, and I'm not going to talk back. Like, there's a lot of that for people in that age now. And so they look at people a lot younger who are more willing to ask questions and challenge things and say, well, what really? To which I would say, or just come back to work. Like, just come back. You got a job, do your job. But other people are saying, well, wait a minute, what about this option? What about this option? And I would propose that the folks of my age with hair of my color would say, if they'd have realized they could ask those questions, they'd have wanted to ask those questions too. Like, the need for that flexibility, that need for that autonomy is as true for me as it is for my daughter. It's just that maybe I hadn't thought of it as something that I could ask for. So to me, to say that that's what these people want and this is what these people want is just too simplistic, is the way I'll put it. But yeah, when I look at the folks around me and what I know about them, not just age, but a bunch of other factors, do I need to adapt my approach based on that? 100%. 100%. Yep. I've got to be very aware of my time. I was doing really well, and now not so much. So here's the thing. If we want to move from potential to performance, we need to help people build the mindset of flexible leadership, the skill set of flexible leadership, and I would propose the habit set of flexible leadership, because we all know, and like if we're thinking about this in terms of organizational leadership development, what do we know? Well, we know there's a lot of times we give people training, and even if they love it, and even if they think the stuff they got was awesome, then it doesn't translate to people doing it at work. And so there's a gap between knowing and doing. There's a gap between skill set and habit set. And if we want to help people move from potential to performance, we have to make sure the mindset matches the skill set, and then we have to help people and expect of people and support people to move from skill set to habit set. So the question is, how do we get there? The question of the hour. I would suggest to you got 5 choices. Like organizationally, if you sort of say, hey, our leaders need some of this stuff, I would say you get 5 choices about how to do it. We call this the 5-choice framework: build, buy, partner, collaborate, or a combo. So let me just talk about each of those real quick. You can either say, we're going to build what we need to develop our leaders, we're going to buy what we need, we're going to find a partner, we're going to collaborate with a partner, or we're going to do some combination of those things. Let me just outline those all just a little bit for you. And as I go through these, you can say, well, this is what we've typically done, or yeah, that's what we do. And then you can ask yourself, is that serving you? Right? But you need to understand, like, what do we currently do? And maybe is that what we need to do or not? The first thing is you're going to build it. You're going to create your learning materials, whether those are digital, whether it's classroom, whatever that is. You're going to maybe borrow or apply outside resources. You're going to deliver it internally or build it internally. Like, you're going to build it. And so your point is, like, we've got the resources, we got the skills, we've got this. That's an approach. Another approach is, well, we're just going to buy it. We're going to outsource the expertise. We may outsource the delivery, depending on what it is. Maybe we want outside training, but we want to deliver it ourselves. So maybe we're outsource the delivery, or maybe not. We're going to find and purchase stuff off the shelf, and we're going to use that stuff. We're not asking people to tailor it. We're going to plug stuff into our e-learning platforms. We're going to use assessments. We're going to do stuff. We're going to find a vendor to help us. And then we're going to basically let them go to work, and we're going to write them a check. That's an approach. Another approach is to find a partner. Like, we don't want to just like hand it off. We would like to partner with someone. We want to leverage their expertise. We want to leverage their ability to help us perhaps deliver. But we don't just want something off the shelf. It needs to match our organization. Maybe like what they've got here, we've already got something. We really like to plug that thing into what we're doing, because that'll work better for us. We've got some stuff that's working, but we need some new stuff. We can modify stuff. And the question now is, can we tweak that? Or maybe from an enterprise perspective, like we really want this to look like, smell like, feel like our organization. And so we want to leverage the expertise and the knowledge and the subject matter expertise and the delivery perhaps, but we want it to look fully like it's ours. Like, it's not off the shelf. It's not just tweaked, like it's ours. And so then the question you would ask is, will you work with us? You find someone to help you do that. Like, that's all of these are approaches. They're all fine approaches based on what? Your context, your situation, your needs. Or maybe you would say, Kevin, well, it's not about one of those 4. It's about some combination where maybe we do some of it ourselves. We bring in people in to help us with some others, or maybe we're doing it ourselves, but we're going to bring in a few pieces to supplement that. We use multiple vendors, we do different things. We've got some stuff we already got, and we want to bring some other stuff in to run alongside of it. Maybe you take a combo approach. Like, all of these are reasonable, rational, possible approaches. However, the one that you've always used, if you're not getting the results you want, maybe it's time to reconsider that. And that's something that you and your organization could think about. So, like, how could we help with one of these 5 choices? Let me just tell you a little bit about that. If you're going to build it, like, I know, like, you could take this webinar and help you do something. You could buy a copy of the book, or maybe you already have a copy of the book, and you say, we're going to build something based on what Kevin's done, what Kevin's team's done, and we're going to build something. You could do that. And so you can use what you've already gotten from us to help you do that, right? You could buy something from us, some of our products and services, which I'm going to tell you about in a second, some of which I'm literally introducing today. So you could do that. You could say, hey, what have you got? We're going to do that. Or maybe you want to sort of incorporate some of what we've got with what you're already doing. Or maybe you want us to help you incorporate, co-create your enterprise leadership development with some of these ideas, but not only these ideas. We can do that. Or you can say, hey, we're going to pick and choose. Like we could help you in any one of these 5 choices. And we'd be happy to help you with any one of these 5 choices. And of course, the first one is one that you would do and we might not even know. We were at a conference a few weeks ago and people came up over and over and over saying, hey, we use your Bud to Boss book to help with our new frontline leaders, to which we say, awesome. We didn't even know who you are, but we've been able to help them help their leaders grow, which is what we're in business to do. So all of these are useful. All of these are appropriate based on context. The question then is, which one works for you, not which one have you always done? That's the question, right? So what are some of the resources? Well, clearly there's a book, right? Like there is a book. You can go to Amazon and buy books. Like that's not hard, right? If you want to buy a bunch of books, probably better off to talk to us because we can probably get you a better deal. We even have them signed if you want them signed, right? So, but you could also take advantage of our Flexible Leadership Masterclass, which I'm going to tell you about in a second, our curated digital content, which I'm going to tell you about in a second, our Flexible Leadership Workshop, which I'm going to introduce to you in a second. We do keynotes. I do keynotes. We do webinars on this content. Maybe that's what you need as a part of your process. We can help you with that. And we can certainly come in alongside of you and help integrate these kinds of ideas and these skills into your enterprise leadership development processes. Like we can help you in a consulting role, or we can help you in a training role, or we can help you in a services role. So let me introduce the things that are new to you today. Number 1, Flexible Leadership Masterclasses. We've developed a number of masterclasses over the years on a variety of contents. This one is brand new. It's not out yet. It's coming soon. It's targeted. It has 14 lessons. It will be SCORM compliant if that's important to you for your e-learning platform, for your LMS. You could use it as a standalone piece. We're going to give people these new skills through the context of e-learning, or we could use it to introduce it as a part of what we're doing with whatever our leadership development stuff is, or it could be supplemental. It could be any of those things. And you can know that if you do that, the instruction comes from me, which might or might not be a positive. I'll leave that to you to decide. And because it's brand new, we're introducing this at a 15% discount. And of course, there's a graduated scale based on how many learners you have, how much it costs. The more learners, the less. But whatever that number is, 15% off that for right now. Okay. Because it's not available today, but it will be available very soon. And you can get 15% discount at whatever level you pick. There happens to be other master classes, not just this one, but this one's brand new. We're actually offering the discount on all of them, as it turns out. Okay. Next, curated digital content. We have a lot of clients that have been asking us, Kevin, you guys have a lot of intellectual property. You have a lot of stuff that we'd like to be able to plug into what we're doing. We'd like to be able to use that as a part of maybe in a combo approach to how we're doing delivery. And we have that in a variety of skills and topics. This is all new. And one of those topic areas is, not surprisingly, flexible leadership. And what it is some pieces of audio and video, digital assets that you can apply, short pieces people can use, as well as job aids and checklists that people can use to apply specific skills, including flexible leadership. You can put those on your LMS. That link is down at the bottom. You'll get a follow-up with all these links in them, and you can get the slides with all these links in them as well. And the third thing that we can provide to you, or that is an option for you as you think about your options here, is our brand new Flexible Leadership Workshop. This will be available starting the 1st of August. My calendar will be available starting the 1st of August to do it. And to begin with, the only person delivering them right now, this will not always be true, but for right now, the only person delivering these is me. It is a one-day workshop. It is an in-person workshop. It is up to 25 people per session. It is immersive, interactive, and practical. It talks in great depth and with great opportunities for people to practice the kinds of ideas that we've talked about today, but obviously going much deeper. And like the masterclass, 15% introductory pricing. And that pricing is that you lock that in when you schedule it. And that scheduling could happen way later in the year. That's totally fine. There's a link for that. And again, all these links will be available to you later. Maybe you're looking for a webinar. You got a lot of leaders. You want something. Maybe you're having a conference for your leaders and you'd like to have me come in and do a keynote. We can certainly do those things for you as well. You have a person on our team that you already know. You can reach out to them about this or any of these things. And if you don't know a person will be reaching out to you as well. Or you can send an email to info@kevineikenberry.com. My team is right on top of that, right? You can send it there. I don't know who my person is, Kevin. Send an email to info@kevineikenberry.com. Hey, I want some help with any of this stuff. And by the way, that's also the email for the slides. That's coming up in a sec. Okay. So here are your choices again. And I don't know what the best one is for your organization. I don't know what one you've done in the past. But what I do know is that if what you've done in the past hasn't always gotten you the results you wanted, then maybe it's time to make a different choice, whatever that might be. But by the way, you don't just have these 5 choices. You actually have a 6th choice, which is to do nothing. And I would like to hope that that's not what you want to do. That maybe what you want to do is, hey, I'm intrigued by some of these ideas. We're going to do a book club. We're going to buy some books and we're going to do a book club and start to integrate some of these ideas, which we would say, awesome. But there could, again, there's 100 ways you can move forward. And this helps you frame what that could look like. And we stand ready to help. And again, if you want the slides, there they are. If you got questions about any of this stuff before someone reaches out to you, there you can go. info@kevineikenberry.com. So we're at the starting line, right? And you came because you want to help your leaders be more effective. You came because you know that if your leaders get more effective, your organization gets more effective, to which I 100% agree. And so that would tell me that if we're at the starting line, the next thing to do is to start. Like, why would we wait? Right? Like some of these can be found. Some of these things you can get pointed to from here. I've sent you individual pages. And again, you're going to get all of that in short order from us. But like, if you saw something here, or if you know that you need your leaders to be more flexible, because if they're not changing, they're getting less effective because the world is changing and the world is more complex and uncertain. And so the job is actually getting harder. Well, let me tell you, why shouldn't we wait? Because uncertainty and change isn't ending. Like, that's not going to end in a minute. Like, it's not like we've been in this time of uncertainty and that's going to go away. Right? That's not going to happen. That's not our reality. And guess what? The role of your leaders is not going to get easier or clearer. You're not likely going to have a smaller span of controls. You're not likely going to have everything stop and let us all get settled in. Like, the job's not going to get easier. And guess what? They're not going to get better in a vacuum. Like, if we're not doing something to help them, and I'm not saying you won't have one, and like, you may be one of those, right? Like, you reach out to do this kind of stuff. And so you are working to get better. But you know that the rank and file leaders in your organization, that's not going to happen in a vacuum. Right? It's just not. And you've got options. You've got resources. We've given you a bunch of stuff today. Some of them will cost you more than others, clearly. And those are choices that you need to make. But what I can tell you for sure is that the 15% discounts I offered you, they're going to go away. They're not going to stay. They're not going to be here. Okay? So that's my hope for you. You came asking yourself, how can I help my leaders move from their potential? I can see it, to having higher levels of performance, to transform potential into performance. And we've talked about a lot of things today that can help, that show you a way to doing that. We've given you a variety of approaches that you could take to help get there. And whichever of those approaches that you would choose to take, we want to stand beside you and help you. Whether that's us coming in alongside you and thinking about your leadership development at an enterprise level, and flexible leadership might or might not be a part of it, cool. Or if you're just going to buy, as the chat says, one more book right now, like whatever it is, we can help and we want to help. And in fact, that's why we're here, is to help more leaders make a bigger positive difference in the world. Because we know that when leaders get better, organizations get better. And that when leaders get better, the world's a better place. Thank you all for being here. And as it said in the chat, if you're here with us live, happy Father's Day, which also means if you forgot and your dad's around, there's your public service announcement. Make sure you take care of your dad this weekend. And we wish you the very best. And we hope to talk to you soon about how we can help you in these ways so that you can help your leaders move from potential to performance. Thanks, everybody.